How are you, mate?
I am alive.
It doesn't matter how you do.
Let's
Oh my God, he did it.
Me and Nigel Farage, in critiquing Lewis in this instance, are saying, well, he's being a bit temperamental and he's moaning. We're both. He's coming at it from a racist standpoint, and I'm just being objective. But our words, Baxty and Shez, are the same, right? And this is why it's so bloody techie, and this is why I feel like Toto should have known better.
You're moaning about the car. What can they do in that situation? You're in the middle of a race. It's just like, look, let's just get on with it now, and we'll talk about it afterwards. I mean, I remember Gunther Steiner. I cannot remember the race, but I remember the clip. Magnussen was moaning about something, and he told him to shut up. He literally told him to shut up.
Okay, Mags, no Lewis, is he?
We know when you're going over the track limits. Yes, there were too many for us to sort out in race, but you're not going to get away with it. We're still gonna penalise you.
Well, then they should have been clearer about that, because that.
Why? The rule is the
they
rule.
should have said
because they're regulators, Shez. That's
how many
why.
times do we see in a race incident noted? They should have just said, right, all track limit violations will be investigated after the race. That's where we as fans then know what's going on.
I'm not giving out any gold stars to the FIA for half-arsing it, basically, and having in theory the right idea, but being bloody shit on execution again, chaps, again. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Shakedown. With me, as always, my right honourable colleagues Shez and Baxty. How are we doing, chaps? Ready? Raring to go, eh?
Yeah. How are you, mate?
I am alive.
It doesn't matter how you do.
Let's
Oh my God, he did it.
Let's go, Baxty. I needed that, bro. I really did need that, man. It's been chaos today. Go on then, lads. Let's talk some F1 to cheer us all up, or not, depending on what we're about to talk about. The topic of the day: Mercedes, Toto Wolff, Sir Lewis Hamilton. A very brief, cheeky interaction from the latter with the former at the Austrian Grand Prix on Sunday, where, on the back of a couple of not broadcasted messages where Lewis was complaining about A, the car, and B, track infringements of the people ahead of him, Toto Wolff responded by saying something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing here, we know the car's not very good. We know the car's bad, Lewis. Please just drive it. Baxty, sir, I'm coming to you first on this, mate. To that, how did you react in real time?
So full disclosure, I didn't watch the race live, so I kind of heard about this and then kind of had to go and see what was going on. And then what I've also done is I've listened to Lewis's race radio as well to kind of get a feel for what was going on. I think it's all storm in a teacup stuff, honestly. I think, look, at the end of the day, Toto's the boss. I know Lewis is a 7-time world champion. I know he's helped build the team to where they are now. But at the end of the day, Toto's the boss. He's the boss. And Lewis was getting tilted in the car. I mean, it's very rare that Lewis gets tilted. The last time I remember Lewis getting tilted was Monaco 2019, like properly tilted. And he had good reason to. The car wasn't working in the way that they wanted it to. Drivers were taking the piss with track limits, and we all saw what happened at the end of the race with the Aston Martin kind of just going, I want to take a look at that, getting all, dobbing everyone in, schoolyard rat and all that. But no, Toto needed to defuse the situation because, Bono was relaying the information to Lewis and Lewis was still complaining. So Toto, in my view, took the right option of just going, shut it down, Lewis, just drive the car. We know it's bad, we'll get it sorted. Look, this is professional sport. It's the heat of competition, and sometimes people are going to have frank and very firm discussions. We've all heard about, give an example, Sir Alex Ferguson at Man United giving people the hair dryer treatment. Yeah, they're all grown-ups at the end of the day, and sometimes you've got to be tough, and sometimes emotions do spill over. I feel like some of the reaction to it has been completely OTT. I mean, it's allowed certain sectors of the Lewis Hamilton fan base to bring out their anti-Toto Wolff agenda, which has just been absolutely ridiculous to watch over the last few days. But honestly, I'm not seeing anything in it, really. Let's be frank. It's professional sport and grown-ups talking to each other.
I don't hate it, Baxty, and I wish it could be so simple. Shez, talk to me, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that in the moment when I first heard it, my usual response to this is the same, that I just think, okay, whatever, this is just a little episode that's happened. But I have to say, the more I've thought about this one, the more troubled I am about what hidden meanings there are behind it. And I have to say, I'm not the kind of person that will read into a single radio message and immediately catastrophize about it. But there are certain things about this that worry me a little. The first is that, on the one hand, Lewis was penalised for a track limits infringement by. I think a lot of that was due to other drivers, specifically Lando Norris, complaining about every time he went off track. And that, I think, was the right thing for Lando to have been doing, because ultimately, if there's advantage to be gained for you by somebody else going off track and getting penalised for it, then you have to go down that route, and you have to try and get them penalised. Lewis talked about it not being racing after the race, but actually, you have to maximize everything that you can, and that is what he was doing. So as soon as he got his penalty, he was complaining about everyone. He was reporting about everybody that went off track ahead of him. So I thought that was actually the right thing to do, and actually increases your competitive advantage. Maybe wouldn't have gone off track myself quite as much in that scenario, but I think it was the right thing to report everybody else. So I don't think it was completely justified for anybody to tell him to stop doing that. And he was talking about the car throughout his radio as well. There were intermixed comments about the car not being where he wanted it to, and I can understand that too, because the team have come off 2 races where they bought an upgrade and actually the car's performed really, really well. And then to come to Austria and suddenly they're behind the Aston Martins essentially on pace. They were sort of the 5th fastest car at this race. That's quite a big come down. So I can understand the frustration, and I can understand that everybody in the team is going to be a little bit frustrated as well. But for the team principal to come on the radio and tell his driver to basically stop moaning about the car and get on and drive, I thought was a little bit out of character for that particular relationship. Now, Toto's gone on and said that afterwards, and said that actually this is how they talk to each other all the time. But I think for that, especially when you know that something like that will get aired, I think it's a bit of a harsh statement to have made over the radio. So normally when we hear a radio message like where the team principal talks to Lewis, it's often because they're trying to G him up and they're trying to get him to overcome some obstacle. Like the best example I can think of is the Austrian Grand Prix was it in 2020, where I think they either pitted him too early or put him on the wrong tires, and James Vowles came on the radio and said, look, we've messed it up, but we know that you've got the ability to get back into this race. That's the kind of message that you'd expect to hear, not the kind of slightly negative intonation of that message. Now, why I worry about that is because when you have an organization like Mercedes that are already under a bit of pressure to perform, what you don't want to start seeing is cracks within the people within the team. Even if there are arguments happening within the team about direction and stuff like that, that's the kind of stuff that you don't want to have out in the open. It's not something that you'd see from Red Bull, for example. It is something that you see from Ferrari, and we complain about it all the time.
That Red Bull thing that you just said, Shez, and that's the key point. Let me chime in on this quickly, Shez.
And it's not always...
let me chime in on this quickly, yeah. So there's so many different ways we can take this, yeah, and I'm in the mood to go deep, because it's I think I don't think it's completely dissimilar to Christian Horner's comments in Silverstone, and here's what I mean by that. I'm going to take it very, very deep right now. When you watch the broadcast, there were loads of messages that they missed out. Lewis was complaining. Let's have it right. He was moaning and he was in his feelings, both about the track limits and about the car not being where he wants it to be. And fair play to Lewis, because I feel like in this season in particular, I don't know where he gets his patience from. Yeah, because if that were me, I would be Max Verstappening down the place by now, like every race. But I don't care about the feelings. Yeah, there's a time and place for leadership, and you know there's a way to that messaging with a view to boost or at the very least not hinder team morale is absolutely important when you've got your leadership cap on. But drivers aren't perfect, and I'll put Lewis Hamilton in that. Fair play to the lad for being patron saint of everything holy and sanctimonious up until this point. I haven't really heard, he's moaned here and there, but at the end of the day, he always come on the radio and say, listen, let's keep pushing, lads. We've been doing good work. He always manages that PC, the old PR63. He toes that line, yeah. On this occasion, though, I empathise with the fella for not towing that line, because he's cheesed off. He's cheesed off at the circumstance. He's cheesed off at the situation. He's cheesed off that he told them not to continue down this funny zero pod design philosophy, and they did, and they've lost another 6 to 9 months depending on who you talk to and how you work it out. So I empathise with Lewis for being cheesed off, but I tell you where I'm pointing my scopes at. Toto Wolff has to know better. He has to know better. Here's why I compare it to the Christian Horner thing, and this is where we get techie chaps. So buckle up for this one, yeah. I had a conversation with a friend who's he used to be a bit of a football journo. We had this conversation about Paul Pogba once upon a time, who, by the way, can be a brilliant player, a genius guy, super technical when he's ready, but can also be a bit, let's say, temperamental. I don't want to say lazy, and I will explain that to you a bit later. But he can be a bit temperamental. And my friend said, listen, what you don't want to do, yeah, you can't go online and call Paul Pogba lazy. I was like, what? But he was being lazy. What are you talking about? He goes, no, but there are racial undertones, and it goes deeper than just saying, oh, well, a player's lazy. When you call a person of colour lazy, it's hard to differentiate, even if you say it from a place of pureness, right, and well-intentioned. It's hard to differentiate between the words that you said and the words that bloody Nigel Farage is saying, right? The two of you are saying both the same words. And so I parlay that back into Toto Wolff. The way that he's spoken to Lewis has opened up a massive can of worms for the Nigel Farage ultra racist types, who, whilst they might be saying that they've just been waiting, right? Lewis absolutely was moaning, if we're being objective and fact checking. But the Nigel Farage types, even if Lewis wasn't moaning, they would be saying that Lewis was moaning anyway, just as a function of their Nigel Farage opinions, right? And so I think Toto's kind of missed the trick in that I don't think he's just got to be a bit. He's been with Lewis long enough, right? They've been in the trenches together. They get what time it is. They were there at Silverstone and Monza. They understand about inciting racial hatred and all that comes with it and what that looks like. So for Toto to do that, I think was at the very least, at best, just a tad naive. Just a tad. Baxty, talk to me on that, bruv. I know I've gone techie there.
Yeah. I can't speak on some of that. I'm a white guy. I saw it as just a firm conversation between two people.
And it was that. I don't think you're wrong, Baxty. Yeah. I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I'm saying take me as an example. If I say that Lewis is moaning and Lewis Crimilton and all this stuff, if I say that, but I say I type that online, and then the Nigel Farage bod types that, who has an agenda, a racist agenda at that, he's going to say his words are going to be the mirror image of what I'm typing. So you can't, do you know what I mean? Unless you, I think this is the gift and the curse with being anomalous on social media, right? You can't, there's no way that you can look at somebody's words and read the intention behind them. All I'd say is that we're both me and Nigel Farage in critiquing Lewis in this instance are saying, well, he's being a bit temperamental and he's moaning. We're both, he's coming at it from a racist standpoint and I'm just being objective. But our words, Baxty and Shez, are the same, right? And this is why it's so bloody techie. And this is why I feel like Toto should have known better. Go on, Baxty.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that I didn't hear this on the, obviously I haven't seen too much of the race broadcast, but when I watched the radio video, there was actually two messages between Toto and Lewis. The second one was that, Lewis, we know the car is bad, please drive it. But there was one before where Toto again was trying to calm Lewis down and say, look, you know, other drivers are going to get penalties after the race. He almost predicted what was going to happen. Yeah, he did predict what was going to happen. He was like, look, just let's keep it calm. Yeah, because that's the job of a team principal. I mean, I've seen some absolute garbage from you know, commenters on social media this week saying that, oh, Toto doesn't do enough to stand up for his drivers and he doesn't do this X, Y, Z. And I'm like, well, first of all, you know, Toto Wolff has a lot to do as a team principal. He's got to, you know, make sure everything is running on track as well as possible, which, let's be frank, in Austria, it wasn't. Mercedes were way off the pace. And clearly their car is not suited to the characteristics of Austria. But he's also got to, he's got to manage people. That includes engineers, it includes, you know, specialists, aerodynamicists and drivers. And Lewis Hamilton very rarely gets tilted in the car. You know, when he does get tilted, it's noteworthy. You know, even early on in his career, very rarely happened. You know, I think the most famous one I can remember was 2009 at Silverstone when he just blew up at McLaren. He was like, "This is a disgrace." So the fact that Lewis is moaning, I first of all, I take Shez's point. Him pointing out other drivers in front, justified. No issue with that whatsoever. You know, he had to do that, but clearly Toto had judged it to be that it was going too far, hence why he then said what he said in the first instance. But the second comment, you know, you're moaning about the car. What can they do in that situation? You're in the middle of a race. It's just like, look, let's just get on with it now and we'll talk about it afterwards. I mean, I remember Günther Steiner, I cannot remember the race, but I remember the clip. Magnussen was moaning about something and he told him to shut up. He literally told him to shut up.
But K-Mag's no Lewis, is he? I just feel like, you're right, you know, Baxty. There's nothing that you said that I could disagree with objectively. But each circumstance, you got to judge on its merits, right? And its nuanced. And I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like I've definitely got one in the chamber for Toto because I feel like for the longest time, as versus the support, and everybody leads in different ways. So I shouldn't even try and compare Toto to Christian because this thing that Toto does better than Christian and vice versa, right? They're different type of leaders coming from very different cultural perspectives. So, but I can't help but look across at the balls that are red garage and get a bit jealous when I see the extent to which Christian Horner support, I don't even say support is an understatement, right? Will die for his team and his driver, right? And I just feel like the driver that Lewis Hamilton is, I reckon, and he didn't even go to the post-race presser, did he? Because he was so cheesed off. I feel like the type of sensitive soul that is Lewis Hamilton, especially on the back of damn near half a season of keeping his mouth shut, towing the party line. Come on, guys. Great work back at Brixworth and Brackley. Like, we push on, guys. Let's keep working. All of that stuff, he's kind of nailed it. Like 9 out of 10 settings for Lewis season to date. He's nailed it. One, you can't extend him a little bit more goodwill, Toto, and not like headmaster him. I don't know, Shez, talk to me, bruv. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yes, there's loads in what you just said that, like some of it has been sort of going through my mind as well. So I, number one, the first radio message I thought was tactically not the right thing to have said. Like literally other teams were telling their drivers to report every single track infringement. That's how Aston Martin basically ran their race.
What are we doing?
Right.
Joke.
Right. And George Russell was one of only 2 drivers in that race that didn't have any track infringements, and he made up a place because of it. So it was the right thing to not drive off track, and it was the right thing to report everyone. So that message didn't make sense to me. And the second one, look, I find it really difficult because I agree with Baxter. I don't think there was any actual malice in that message intentionally, but I also absolutely agree with where you're coming from. I totally understand where you're coming from, Cameron. That the words that he used definitely have some stereotypical undertones, and that I'm sure he didn't realize that that's what he was saying in the heat of the moment, and I'm sure he didn't intend for that.
But he should. Shez is the point. You're Toto Wolff, and you're the team principal of Lewis Hamilton, and it's not. This isn't a new thing.
And they're not turning up to the presser. Not just that, the fact that I think on social media post race, Lewis normally will confront this kind of thing up front and say, look, me and Toto talk like this to each other all the time, but he hasn't done that, which to me sounds like it's a bit more than just a little bit of banter over the radio. But I do need to call you up on the other side of things as well. That like, I agree that Christian Horner does go to bat for his driver almost unanimously, but he's also like in the heat of the moment. He's the same when Checo messed up as badly as he did in qualifying in Austria. He wasn't particularly backwards in coming forwards, was he? In saying that Checo had just messed it up and he should have kept it within the white lines.
But like on the 4th or 5th time of
not really. He turned up in an interview and immediately was on the rampage.
But what I'm saying to you is though, so do you remember? I want to say it was the race before last, when maybe a couple of races back, when Nico tried to pull Christian Horner up on Checo's performances, right? Christian wasn't having any of it. I think Christian, in Christian's defense, I think Christian's got a threshold right beyond which he's gonna start letting nukes go off. But I mean, this is like the 5th time that Checo hasn't made Q3. What did we do? Like, I can't blame Christian for that. A man has to have a threshold after which the patience ebbs away.
A lot of Christian Horner's tactics though are not just defending his own driver; they're attacking somebody else.
No, he's guerrilla warfare.
And that I don't have a lot of time for. That's something I don't see Toto do. But what I have not seen Toto do, to the extent that he did it in Austria, was to openly tell his driver what to do. And that the same. I think the same as you. I felt a little bit uncomfortable about that.
The use of the imperative is just like, I was just and you know what it smacked of? I'll tell you guys what it reminded me of. And again, this is getting a bit deep and techie, but I remember in America there was, I want to say, a CNBC broadcaster, or maybe a Fox broadcaster, that on the back of LeBron's political protests against Trump and social justice and all that good stuff, and like police brutality, because LeBron was knee deep in it properly on the front line. On the back of all that, what did this reporter tell him? Shut up and dribble. And the words, like the cadence and the syllables and the structure of the clause were just all, but shut up and dribble. Just, we know it's bad. We know the car's bad. Just drive it, please. It was very it just reminded me the rhythm in which, like the way in which Toto uttered those words. I was like, hold on, that's and I don't think that would be lost on Lewis neither. He'll be.
He stopped talking, didn't he? After that.
Yeah, I don't think that was lost on Lewis neither. I'm not the one. You know me, guys. I've gotten a lot of flack for criticizing it. I will openly criticize Lewis, even as a black man. I don't care if I feel like if I feel like he warrants criticism for something that I see from a distance, and again, limited knowledge of the circumstance and all that stuff. But I'm going to throw it out there. I'm far too old and grey to be pulling my punches these days. But on this one occasion, chaps, my heart was just like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh my God, like what are you saying, Toto? What are you saying? I don't know. You can't fight. It's not edifying to have an enemy within. And I reckon as soon as Lewis got out the car, as soon as Lewis heard that back, that's exactly how he would have felt. Interesting. Hopefully I'm over egging it, chaps, but I feel like that could potentially be a seminal moment in a relationship. I'm not saying that Lewis is going to jump ship anytime soon, but I think that's, I don't know. I don't know. I just felt like it was a bit, I felt it. I wasn't even superimposing onto it. Like I felt it when Toto said that. So I don't know, chaps. Interesting. Talk to me about, as we round third base, fellas. Talk to me very quickly about track limits, and then we'll get into Silverstone. Shez, go first, mate. What did you make of the track limit fiasco?
Yeah, so I thought that there was a lot of blaming of stewards, the FIA, the penalty process for why this happened. And if I'm gonna sort of lay out the facts, yes, there were a lot of infringements, there were a lot of reports, and yes, the technology that the FIA and the stewards had to analyze that and then dish out penalties was probably not quite up to it, and that's why we had the 5-hour delay in giving out the penalties that were eventually given out. But they had 1,400 infringements to go through. 1,400. And I've had a lot of people and well-respected people online saying, well, the FIA knew that this was going to be a problem because they had all these infringements on the Saturday. Why didn't they do something to stop it from happening on Sunday? Well, my answer to that is, number one, you're asking to create a brand new technology between Saturday and Sunday when they've not been able to come up with that technology for the last 10 years. Wait. And the second is that on the other side of it is, well, the drivers and the teams knew that too. They knew that these track limits infringements were going to get policed, and they were going to, and there were going to be penalties handed out. So why would you then drive your car to a point that you're always going over the track limits? Yes, it's faster, and yes, it's not. It's a little bit easier to let your car wash wide in turn 9 and 10. But there were two drivers that were able to do it without a single track limits infringement. And yes, they were a bit slower than their teammate, but actually they ended up further on than their teammate. And second, we know that as soon as you stick a gravel trap in there, as soon as you stick a rumble strip in there, as soon as you put a big sausage curb in there, the drivers aren't going over it. So they can do it. They just know that they can get away with it. So they continue to just drive over the limit. And what I'm hoping is that by having this thing happen, that they know that they're getting policed on every corner every single time, they'll be less willing or they'll be less happy to do it, and we won't have quite as many track limits infringements. And if we do, then great. You know what? Even if it takes 5 hours, I thought it was absolutely the right thing for the FIA to go, no, we're not having this. Yes, it's going to take us time to hand out the limits, and it might look stupid, but you guys signed up to track limits to the white line. If you can't keep to that rule, we're going to punish you, and that's how it should be.
Shez, hold on. I feel like you're victim in blaming, bruv.
I think the wrong victim was blamed.
So yeah, no, I think you're blaming the wrong victim, even in your transposition victim blame. So here's my thing. Yeah, you say it'd been a weekend since they realised that they were going to need to police this. They changed this rule last year, Shez. They knew that this was
so they had it last year.
Bang. So they knew that right. So they changed. They knew that they were going to. All right. So this was an unknown, right? They knew that they were going to happen across this issue at the Red Bull Ring this year because of that type of track. This is the classic FIA thing where they just poke their head in the parapet and just blah 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 blah. Let's see what happens. Hopefully it would be all right. And I just think it's a nonsense. Of course, the drivers are going to try and their drivers, Shez. Of course, we saw Checo Perez and bloody Max Verstappen doing it in consecutive on the same turn. Yes. Even if there is time to be gained, they will gain it. the regulator as the FIA, they need to police this.
And they did.
Not just police it when, Shez. Like,
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God,
within the
Shez,
restraints of their...
Shez, hold on, Shez. This is getting techie now. I'm going to throw it to Baxty. How did they police it in the right way? So they got 1,200, 1,400, whatever the number was. You can't. It's a nonsense, Shez. To put. You can't police things after the fact.
Of course you can. But
This is nonsense, bro.
Because in every sport where you have, in football, when you have VAR, when you have Hawkeye in cricket,
in
and
real
tennis,
time, Shez.
No, but you still stop the game and watch what's happening.
But it happens. So ultimately, the outcome happens. The decision is made in real time, not after the race is finished, or the match has finished, or the game is finished.
But the sport allows that to happen. The sport has a pace that allows that to happen. But, Formula One doesn't have that. You had a conversation with Bryson about this. He didn't have a solution.
I tell you what, though, I also had a conversation with Blake about this, who's far closer to these circumstances than any of us. And he said it was a very quick fix. Get a couple coders in and a couple sensors and sort it out. And they've had long to sort it out, Shez. I don't have any. So you've been talking about patience threshold, my patience with them and the FIA. This isn't the first one and it won't be the last, Shez. I'm done with them. Baxty, chime in on this very quickly, sir.
As I always say with the FIA, they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. They're going to get criticised regardless. I mean, look, this situation was a mess. I mean, it shouldn't be that the governing body of a sport is basically told by a competitor, hey, you should probably look at that, because Aston Martin were the ones that put the appeal in.
This is ridiculous. That's not what happened, though.
That is what happened. Aston Martin put the appeal in.
But they were already looking at all of these reviews. They said, look, we already know that we've got a whole bunch of them backlogged up. You've just drawn our attention to it. That's why we've upheld the protest.
But even in that, Shez, that's still chaos.
Yeah, that's still ridiculous.
Yeah, that's
still ridiculous.
This is the inmates running the asylum, Shez. I can't believe we're trying to give FIA
absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I don't blame Aston Martin. They had to do what they
absolutely
needed to do.
the right thing to do. Yeah, I don't disagree with that either.
Fair enough. But clearly there has to be some kind of system in place. We've known about Turn 10 at Austria for years that it's been a problem with track limits. I remember last year they were getting pinged all over the place for track limits, and it's the same again this year. I got a message during quali on Friday from a mate, basically saying, "Why isn't there why did they get rid of a sausage curb there?" Or they need something there to make it work. Right. I mean, Lewis was complaining that he said part of his problem was that he couldn't turn the car. Now, whether that's him just trying to kid the stewards because we know they listen to the radio, like, I can't turn my car. I mean, we know how it works with the stewards. If you go over the line, your lap time gets deleted and you get warned. That's how it works. I think the fact, I think personally they should have just said, look, we're going to have to leave it as is because we've got so many to go through. We need to use this as a lesson to get everything right in the future.
I don't agree with that. But because ultimately what you're saying is that it's okay.
Shez, hold on. Let Baxty finish his points. Go on.
Yeah, and it's look, it's incredibly difficult. I don't envy them this job, but I agree with Cameron in that they should have known about this because this has been a problem for years and they should have got it sorted. I mean, how many times do we see the FIA get forced into action rather than be preventative? Why are they having to react to a situation? Everyone knows about Turn 10 at Austria. It's been that case since 2016, since it came back onto the calendar. We saw cars going left, right, and centre. It was worse this year. And look, 1,400 is unmanageable for the stewards to look at. It's unmanageable. Even with the technology that they have, even with the VAR that they have in Lausanne or wherever it is, which we hear nothing about. It's unmanageable to expect that. They've got to come up with a better system.
Hold on. So whose fault is it that there were 1,400 infringements? It's the FIA's fault that 1,400 drivers on 1,400 separate occasions.
No, it's 50-50 blame because the drivers were taking the piss. Let's be frank.
But they were told that they aren't allowed.
No, I disagree completely with this. I'm not going to sit on here and blame the drivers for being F1 drivers. These guys are going to... This is what they do. They are after Delta every single lap. So then it's the responsibility of the regulator to make sure, do whatever you have to bloody do to make sure. If you can't manage 1,400 separate instances that you need to go and interrogate, then there's something else in the background that you need to do, right? Change the track limit, something. You've got a million bloody options. I don't know why we're talking about the FIA like they're not, hold on, Shez, like they're not the best and the brightest in the game as far as racing stewardship. Bloody sort it out, man. I'm not extending these, like, if we're talking about empathy earlier, I'm not extending these like any empathy. And what I'm definitely not about to do, Shez, is bloody blame the drivers for being what? For being F1 drivers. This harks back to Shez. What this reminds me of, Shez, is you remember when George Russell was just being an F1 driver and everyone was like, oh, he's an absolute snake. How dare he stab Lewis Hamilton? He's an F1 driver. These are F1 drivers. If there is time to be gained, then if they can game the system, then they're going to game the system. I'm not blaming them for 1,200, 10, 20 shares. I'm with you, bruv. 50, 70, 100 even. 1,200. So that's not the drivers then. That's something's going on there, man. And the FIA need to, for once, pull their finger out and stop worrying about conquering North America and do something. Do sort out the rules and the regulations.
But what do you want them to do?
Brother, I'm not the FIA. I'm not a stupid. I'm not going to tell. No, I'm not going to tell. I'm not going to. I don't have the panacea, Shez. I think it's even unfair to ask me. I've never stewarded a race or been race control ever in my life. Why am I? They should have the answer. Guarantee you, if you put break on here and asked him 10 seconds, he gave me the answer last time I talked to him. Like it's not a long thing at all. Shez, go on, Baxty.
Well, Shez, I just responding to Shez, I'll repeat what I said. I want the FIA to be preventative rather than reactive.
Okay,
you're asking too much there, Baxty. Go on, Shez.
So look, we've said that drivers will be drivers and they will try and game the system. So the FIA have said, fine, you can game the system, but we know when you're going over the track limits. Yes, there were too many for us to sort out in race, but you're not going to get away with it. We're still going to penalise you.
Well, then they should have been clearer about that, because
why? The rule is the
they
rule.
should have said
because they're regulators. Shez, that's
how many times do we see in a race incident noted? They should have just said, right, all track limit violations will be investigated after the race. That's where we as fans then know what's going on.
Don't even get onto that one, Baxter.
Whereas the FIA do everything, shroud of secrecy, everything else.
I'll concede that point, that maybe the communication should have been better. But the fact that they actually went after every one of those track limits was the right thing to do. Because yes, drivers will always try and take liberties. So it is up to the FIA to go, right, we're not just going to let that go. We are going to do something about it, which is what they did. Yes, I concede they should have communicated that better, but they did do the thing that they should have done. And in terms of what can they do about it, turns 9 and 10 are difficult. If you put a sausage curb there, the drivers complain that you're going to shake the car up, you're going to cause injuries, you're going to cause unintended crashes. You want to put a gravel trap there. The bikers say that you can't. We don't want a gravel trap there, and the rest of the support series and other series that use the Red Bull ring are going to say we don't want a gravel trap there either, because it messes up our entire weekend. So it's not financially sustainable to just put a gravel trap there in and out. Okay, so then you're talking about, right, are there any external, are there any sort of laterally left field thinking solutions to this? So you said that Blake has talked about sensors. They increased the number of sensors that there were on the car and the track this season, but they needed
sensors and code. Blake said that it's not a complicated code to write, to establish.
But what they have done this season, and it's what Bryson said in your chat with him, is that they had the technology to know that these were happening, but they wanted a backup manual system to check each one in case they were getting it wrong. I can't blame that the first time they're using a particular system.
Right, I can't defend it. No time at all.
Well, this is why we have an argument.
Yeah, no, I've got no.
They're damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't.
No, but Baxty, I'm not even going to have you say that, bro, because they didn't.
That's what I'm saying. If they do the right thing, there'll be somebody criticising them, and if they do the wrong thing,
define the right thing, Baxty.
Yeah,
the right thing.
In any situation, Like,
I hear what you're saying, Baxty.
I take Chez's point that they needed to police it. Fine, but then they're going to get criticised by Esteban Ocon fans, Lewis Hamilton fan, anyone that got a penalty. Esteban Ocon got a 30-second penalty.
That's
it was
bonkers.
Bahrain all over again.
Yeah, so like I just think Baxty, you do it properly for once. FFS.
If they didn't police it, they get criticised.
No, I agree with you, but you don't get no gold stars for my money for having the right idea and just being SH1T on execution. You are the FIA, for crying out loud. This has been a problem, a lingering problem. This is nothing new. This wasn't an act of God that just, you know what I mean, like a wheel fell off into the crowd. This isn't that. We were here last year. It's not a new track on the calendar. The world were aware that turn 10 was going to be an issue as far as the changed, the fresh regs around track infringements. I'm not giving out any gold stars to the FIA for half-arsing it, basically, and having in theory the right idea, but being bloody shit on execution again, chaps. Again, if this is the first time and they weren't a serial killer, then cool. But how many times are we going to sit here and have this conversation about FIA as a bloody SH1T regulatory body? I've had enough, lads. Go on, Shez, quickly though.
Yeah, very, very quickly. I just want to answer that "we've been here before" statement, okay? Because last season they'd introduced the rule, but they didn't have the technology to pick these up. So the magnitude of the infringements that they picked up last season was nowhere near what they had this season. So you're looking at an order of magnitude. I'm not even talking about track limit, Shez. I'm talking about the serial killer as far as when we talked about it on last week's episode, right? The serial killer as far as ineptitude and incompetence and inconsistency that embodies and engenders everything that the FIA do. Yet again, here we are talking about the same thing. Okay, it's the same thing in a different wrapping. It's track limits this time, and not a bloody inconsistency. I don't
It's not a penalty after the race that got instituted and then retracted and then put back in to where George Russell is having to skip down the road and go to Aston Martin to take Fernando Alonso's third place straight. What are we doing, lads? Surely, come on. This is the upper echelon of motorsport. And I think we can all agree around the table that this isn't good enough. It's been going on for too long in one form or another, Shez. I'm not talking about specific track limits.
Yeah, that much I agree with. But I think this
Baxty, go on.
Yeah, I just want to quickly say this because we haven't really got time to linger on this one too much. We spoke about inconsistent stewarding last week, and I think, basically as soon as we said it, it was almost like we spoke this whole situation into existence, But it wasn't just that situation as well. There was the whole Max Lewis situation on Saturday where Lewis blocked Max and then Max gave him a receipt. Now, people were saying, well, why wasn't Max penalised? Well, okay. And then there was some suggestion, well, Lewis would have been the one to get the penalty. Why weren't they both penalised? They both impeded each other. Why aren't we investigating somewhere like that? Two drivers have been impeded. One not deliberately, the one very clearly deliberately. Why are we not investigating that? What? Because it's Lewis and Max, and they're worried that the internet are going to moan at them. You're the regulatory body. Do better.
This is the roadman rules, isn't it, Baxty? This is the streets that we're talking about. An eye for an eye.
Ridiculous situation. They both should have had penalties for that sprint. I mean, Lewis was at the back anyway, but Max probably would have won that sprint race with a 3-place grid penalty anyway. His car's that quick, and he's not Checo driving it.
Shez, go on, mate. Have the final word.
I mean, I think I've said what I needed, what I wanted to say. And I fully agree with you that the FIA do a lot of things really, really badly. And I've been on this show and I've talked about that on more than one occasion. This one I think is different. I think this one in this specific situation. We talked about inconsistent stewarding last time. We wanted them to be consistent. They have been consistent with track limits, both last season and this season, and we're complaining about it. And I think that is why I'm a little bit. That's why I find it uncomfortable when everyone's going is saying, "Oh, it's the FIA's fault for not stewarding it properly." I don't think it's that. I think they did the best that they could with the technology that they had on them this weekend. And yes, the technology needs to be improved, but you can't expect that to happen from Saturday to Sunday. They have improved it from last year to this year, which is why so many more infringements were picked up. That's just how it is.
Oh, Shez, I will not have anybody defend the FIA for what happened. You can't get any gold stuff, bro. You can't get any gold. The FIA, our little ones who are like 2.5 and 3 years old, respectively, of course, that's different. You can give them a gold star for theory. But if you come out with a decent idea and it's lost in the E minus execution, then this is Shez, I'm done. I am done ski. That's put me in a bad mood now talking about.
Can I just ask you one last question? I promise this is the last one.
Quickly.
Esteban Ocon gets 30-second penalty. You think that's chaos? Is it chaos that he got the penalty, or chaos that he had so many infringements that he got a 30-second penalty?
So I'm not going to point my scopes at the driver, Shez. I genuinely can't, because when else has Esteban Ocon ever got a 30-second? But this is clearly an anomalous instance where something's gone wrong on the regulator side of things. Not the drivers are going to squeeze every one of those corners within an inch of its life to get every 10th of delta possible, right? That's the way and sometimes they're going to deliberately run off. Like if it's 3 strikes or 4 strikes they're out, of course they're going to take the 3 strikes, of course. What else do you expect? Don't hate the player, hate the game, Shez. And
that's why the game regulated it.
But did they though, Shez? This point.
I think they just went about it the wrong way.
That's what I'm saying, Baxter. You can't.
And the communication was a problem. They
didn't go about it the right way. I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
They probably should have said, we're looking at all of these.
Poor. Don't even know the result of the race, bloody after the races. What are we? Yeah, they need to sort that. And you know what? If I'm a betting man, same time next year, lads, we'll be having a craziness at turn 10 again. The FIA are going to sit on their hands and continue with the existing workload and firefight as they have done for the past 36 months. And then we'll be having the same conversation. There'll be another 1,500 infringements that they'll bloody diagnose after the race and have to retroactively institute them to where we as the viewing public don't even know the bloody result. Good game, FIA. Good game. Fair play, lads. Right, lads, I'm going to draw it to a close, man, because I've got to go and run and do a gazillion things. You boys have been both legends. For Baxty, at BaxtyB on Twitter, BaxtyBF1 on YouTube. For Shez, at ShezMed on Twitter. I've been your boy Cameron, as always. Do me a favour, if you're watching on YouTube, drop a like, subscribe, comment, as always. If you're listening on a podcasting platform, scroll right to the top and drop 5-star review. Por favor, purple sector only for 2023. You guys have been legends. Enjoy the racing this weekend. Between now and next time, hug someone that you love and look, but never stare. Peace.